the sense, Mark, that somehow there's this hope, but also acceptance. There's this idea of striving, but also understanding limitations. Where's your head at with all of that? How do you hold those, not quite counter truths, but almost counter truths?
I think the problem that we had with holding both of those side by side is that in the beginning, in hospital, the psychologists, particularly in England, had built a whole healthcare rehabilitation program based on the fact that people had to accept, people being the patients and the family members, had to get their heads around the fact that there is no cure for paralysis right now, and that's how it's been since people were kept alive in the mid to late 40s on. And they have seen people who don't accept it, who don't learn to look after themselves, they don't accept that there is a life to be led, and in fact in lots and lots of cases must be led entirely in the wheelchair. So there's this sort of emphasis that if people talk about a cure or talk about new interventions or medical breakthroughs, that they're in the hope camp and they will somehow miss out on the acceptance of the injury. So this emphasis on acceptance was really challenging, and we talked about it. The emphasis on acceptance runs contrary to everything that we're about as human beings. We would never get up in the morning if we didn't have hope. So hope seemed to be, if I go back to the South, when I was in hospital, the South Pole was so clear in my memory because I'd just done the expedition there the year before. So I was thinking a lot about the polar explorers. The idea that the polar explorers just would sit in England or Norway and accept that they're never going to discover the ends of the earth, that acceptance would have kept them in Norway or England. But they hoped for something more, and they travelled and explored and pushed the boundaries and eventually got to the South Pole and crossed Antarctica and so on. So I think throughout history, human beings have always had to accept or not have had the opportunity to accept where they are and also hope for something better in the future. And where we got to after 2-3 years was that in fact we need to have acceptance and hope running in parallel and hold those things side by side. So acceptance for me is that I'm sitting down in my wheelchair talking to you, and I'll roll out of here after this discussion, and I will be rolled out by my carer and life will carry on in the wheelchair. But tomorrow morning I will be in my robotic legs, having my back electrically stimulated, and later on this afternoon I'll be talking to our collaborators in Los Angeles who are working on finding a cure for paralysis. So those things are seemingly not compatible, but of course they are if you believe that acceptance and hope can run in parallel.
Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because with hope, I remember having this discussion recently with my therapist, actually, because I'm a big believer in hope, and so is she. And we started a conversation one day, and she said, I heard something about hope yesterday that I'm not too happy about. I said, what's that? And she said, well, hope is not being mindful. Hope is being, wishful for the future. It's not being living in the present. And we talked about it for a few minutes. We both agreed that we still love hope.
Yeah.
but it is not as clear cut, I think, as hope conquers all.
But hope is in the present. Hope is my wish now.
For the future.
For the future. And it's and I think it like gratitude, I think it's very close to gratitude. And I think gratitude is one of the most important practices against.
Absolutely.
It's without.
So powerful.
I'm a Brene Brown junkie. Without gratitude, vulnerability and shame. Without gratitude, practicing gratitude, you can't access joy. And I think hope's in there. And I think we have good reason to be hopeful now. We just have lots of work to do, and we need lots of money to do it. And Trump has apparently just cut all the funding into paralysis